Hello. They're working. Good. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the RSU5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, November 29th, 2023, and we're here in the Durham Community School cafeteria. We do have a few folks that aren't with us this evening. Some are traveling, some aren't feeling well. So Cheyenne, Beth, and Colin will not be joining us this evening. I believe Lily is on her way, just running a little bit behind getting out to Durham. Oh, there she is. Welcome. Right on cue. All right, so we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the November 8th, 2023 meeting as presented, barring any errors or omissions? Candy, thank you. Danielle? All those in favor? Great. None opposed? Adjournments?
None this evening.
Perfect. So we will move on to good news and recognition and go right over to Lily.
Can you guys hear me okay? So to start my student report, I just want to talk a little bit about the leadership groups at FHS. We've had some really good discussions in student leadership, leading talks about like issues at school, including students from all grade levels. That's been really successful. A club called Student Activists in Freeport are showing a film called Dawnland, and having discussions about self-educating ourselves about the Wabanaki tribes, the current state of them, and history. And I thought that was very interesting that students are interested in this and bring it more into our school. As for music goes, we've had a lot of exciting updates. District 3 music audition results have come in. We are sending a lot of students this year, so it's for band and chorus. The jazz band at Freeport High School has begun practice. There's a lot of interest in that. So we've seen students, again, from all grade levels. And our chorus and band is very busy preparing for the concert, which will be on January 11th. So a little bit out. They're busy working on that. A lot of winter sports, since we last talked, have started to meet and have practices. Not a lot of games have happened yet, but JV varsity girls hockey has had their first game and had a very successful win against Lewiston. Yeah, that is it for my student report.
Thank you. All right, so next on our agenda, item 7 is public comment. So if we have anyone who would like to speak this evening, we ask you come up to the microphone. Oh, you're here just to cheer on Aaron? Love that. Okay. All right, then we will move right on to number 8, report from the superintendent.
Okay. Starting with some district happenings. I think it's great Eric's here tonight because I'm going to share some information that he shared with me, and it's really rewriting history at our high school. Our high school girls basketball coach, Seth Farrington, has been communicating with a resident and former FHS basketball player, Barb Kraus, for several years. And he's done a lot of research, and he has discovered that she actually scored over 1,000 points in her career, but it was never recorded at the school or enshrined in the Maine Basketball Hall of Fame. So at halftime of the game scheduled for December 12th against Morse, Seth wants to recognize Barb's achievement along with the FHS she was part of that won the state basketball championship in 1976. What's really significant to note is that 1976 was the second year that the MPA was recognizing female athletics after the passing of Title IX in 1973. So that's pretty awesome. And it's a lovely way to connect our own student athletes with those who paved the way. So I certainly thank Seth for that hard work, and I hope people show up to the game on December 12th to celebrate all the achievements of all these women. I'd like to update the board with vacancies that we have currently in the district still. For teaching vacancies, we're still looking for an instructional strategist. That's been posted for quite some time. And we do have some applicants, and the plan is to interview some of those folks. We actually reposted the position. Tonight, you'll see that we have a resignation from a grade 2 teacher at at Moore Street School. That position has been posted, and they're going to be having some interviews for candidates next Wednesday. For special education ed techs, we are currently down 6, 1 at Moore Street, 1 at Mass Landing, 1 at Durham Community School, and 3 at the high school. Interestingly enough, this year in the district, we've actually added 6 ed tech positions through local entitlement funds, no local funds out of that. So we're down 6, but there are actually 6 new positions, some of which we filled and shuffled. So that's where we're at with that. General education ed techs, we actually were down 1 at Freeport High School. Custodians, we've down 4 all year. I am thrilled to announce we now have 7 applicants for those positions. Glenn has interviewed 2 that we're doing some reference checks on that look very promising, and interviewing some other candidates later on that week. So potentially, knock wood, if this works out for us, we'll have our positions filled. And it's been a long, long time since we've had that, including last year. So that's good news. On a not so good news, we're still down 6 bus drivers. That includes Jeremy's position. We have to include that because he's driving as well as doing all the duties as director. We have no applicants right now. And as I mentioned to the board earlier this week, on Tuesday, we were down drivers due to illness, and we had to cancel a run in Durham. And I really thank the whole team, Jeremy and the team at Durham, and also Mr. Pidden for his work to make sure that we could get those students to school. But we've been afraid this was going to happen for this year and last year, and it has happened. So we really still need to continue to recruit our drivers and think perhaps even think of our routes differently. So if anyone wants to drive a bus, knows anyone who is interested in working for us, please let them know. The last piece, certainly I thank Lily for pointing out some of those great student performances coming up. This is the time of year we have an awful lot of students' performances in all our schools, so I'll point some of those out for the public. Friday night at the Sparkle Parade, our Freeport Middle School band will be performing. And interesting, WGME 13 contacted Mr. Grogan this week, and they want to shadow a band. They're going to shadow our band and actually go to the rehearsal this week and then be with them and march with them in the parade, which is pretty awesome. Mass Landing, they're getting ready for their band and chorus concert on the December 7th, PES concert on the 14th, but all at 6 o'clock. And then we have a choral concert, combined middle school and high school, on the 19th at 6. And then we wrap it up with DCS band and chorus holiday concert on the 20th at 6. So I hope folks turn out for some of those wonderful opportunities. And the last piece of the report is we have received a resignation from Ashley Bluen, school 2nd grade teacher. And that's that one has.
Okay, so thank you for that report. We will move on to number 9. We'll start with the Finance Administrator report. Kelly.
Good evening. Included in your packet tonight are the expenditures through the month of October, through October 31st, 2023. We are on target for our collections for our revenues, and we're about 83.5 expended and encumbered within the expenditure lines within our budget. A lot of that has to do with what you just heard from the superintendent's report out of the vacant positions. So those are creating some savings for us at this point in the year. We're hoping to get them filled because the money is budgeted for them, and we are hoping to get those filled. But there are no concerns at this time.
Questions for Kelly? Thank you. All right. So we will continue on with our update and goal review parade. So we're going to start this evening with nutrition and Aaron Dow.
I made a joke that Dorothy and Deanna here are my fan club, but I actually am wearing this because I have a repetitive stress injury from giving my staff thumbs up so much. Deanna's actually retired last year and has been working more hours this year than she ever did as manager, covering the middle school. So thank you for being here. I hope you guys like numbers because I have some for you tonight. In the first 3 months of this year, we've had a 21% increase in the number of breakfasts and 11% more lunches than the same time last year. So that's pretty impressive. Right now, 41% of our students are accessing breakfast on average, and 66% are accessing lunch. Freeport High School, Freeport Middle School, Moore Street School, and I think maybe Mass Landing have repeatedly broken their all-time high meal records multiple times just since August. So that's 60% more breakfasts and 27% more lunches than in 2021. And it's 362% more breakfasts than when I started here in 2017 and 113% more lunches. So it's free, right? It's free. That must be what's making the big difference. I mean, it definitely has something to do with it. But in the days, 62% fewer breakfasts. Everyone who wanted a meal could have one. We had policies in place long before the state had laws that nobody would be denied a meal if they couldn't pay for it. And we had $45,000 in unpaid meal debts to show for it. I think that the climate lately within our district that we've created around the meals program, I think the continued commitment to freshness and balance and student acceptance and the lengths that we've gone to adapt to every bell schedule change, every field trip, every global pandemic. It's created a lot of trust in our program, and I think we're feeling that from both the parents and the students. Thank goodness she has enough staff, they say. That's wrong too. I had unfilled positions sit open all last year. I have 2 more team members now than I did when I started in 2017, and we served 362% fewer breakfasts and 113% fewer lunches. And I say on the books because since the beginning of this year, there's only been a handful of days when I had more than 75% of my staff working. So even when I can fill absences with staff, subs or my retirees or even myself, it's often not enough with the numbers that we're doing right now. I honestly can say that I did not expect to see another jump like we did this year in meals. We were all caught off guard, but everybody's doing a great job, but we're getting tired. And I think that we're seeing that families are telling their kids, look, you can eat at home or you can eat at school or you can not eat because the economic climate out there is quite something right now. So I don't expect to see these increases go down over time. I expect to see more and more meals going out of our door. I think the best thing the board could have done to support us was to accept the pay bump for staff that went through on the most recent support staff agreement. And I think that's going to do a lot to retain the dedicated kitchen family that we already have. And it's going to incentivize people to join our team. So I can't thank everybody who was involved in that enough. The good news for now is that for everyone is that financially the program's in the best shape it's ever been. I'll give you more on that at my budget presentation. So I'll turn right now to my goal review for last year and my goals for the coming year. So last year, one of my primary goals was to continue to address student hunger and ensure access to the school meals program. And to that effect, I partnered with the Jobs for Maine graduates groups at Freeport High School, Freeport Middle School, and Durham Community School. They had all received Full Plates, Full Potential grants to address student hunger. And so I met with them to brainstorm and discuss pros and cons and and develop actionable and sustainable plans for each group. Freeport Middle School wanted to do a snack cart after school. So I helped them choose and purchase the equipment they needed, and I purchased their snacks at cost. And I worked with them to ensure that all of their snacks met the smart snack standards that all the foods in our district have to abide by, even though they didn't have to because they were well after school ended. JMG students here at Durham Community School elected to purchase a large stainless steel kitchen island that serves as a condiment station and kind of a midpoint between the serving line and the table. They noticed kids were dropping their trays due to space. Their grant didn't cover the full cost of the purchase, so my department contributed about a third of that cost, and it's been a huge success. Everybody loves it. At the high school, JMG students identified access to breakfast as their main concern. They did a student survey that showed that students perceive the elimination of that mid break as a big barrier to their access to breakfast. So they did some surveying. I visited Westbrook High School, and at the end of the day, we decided to purchase a breakfast vending machine to put up near the office. The vending machine was about $15,000. JMG's grant was $2,500. I applied for a $5,000 grant and got it, and then I funded the rest of it because it was only going to take about 2,000 breakfasts overall to pay the remainder of it. That's been placed. It's been received. It has not been activated because I've been spending so much time in the kitchens. But I am in touch with the vendors that we're using, and I think that we have an anticipated maiden voyage right after Christmas break. My second objective was to work with the Wellness Committee to use the results of the parent survey and other available support and enhance its goal planning and improve communication about wellness to all of the stakeholders. We met 6 times last year. We still struggle with participation. We were able to achieve our primary annual goal of compiling website data and content that reflects the wellness priorities from the parents. And the website hasn't been deployed, but we have everything put together for it. Peter Wagner has agreed to step in to help chair the committee for this year. He met with Paige and I before Thanksgiving to brainstorm some ideas to increase interest. We have a triennial review of the wellness policy that'll be coming due in the spring, so that's a great way for us to evaluate what the district is doing well and what we should be doing. And we're going to try for a different meeting time, and we should be sending that invite out by the end of the week. The last goal that I had was to inventory and evaluate major equipment and facilities in the district. I did all of that. I also have engaged Dirigo Food Service to develop a preventative maintenance program for all of our appliances, and Advanced Mechanical will do the refrigeration part of it. I was able to source high quality and energy efficient appliances for my capital purchases for last school year. Then they came well in under the estimate, so I was able to purchase 2 additional pieces that were next on the capital improvements. So if anybody has any questions about last year's goals, I'm here for that.
Carry on.
Thank you. This year's goals. The first one may look a little bit familiar for those of you who have been here as long as I have or longer, is to evaluate school meal equity and access across all schools, grades, and circumstances. It's a version of one I did a few years ago. I'm a big believer that I need to critically evaluate and formally report meal access observations to the administration on a regular basis. Examples of past metrics I've used are, do a la carte sales interfere with reimbursable meal sales? Are federal and district civil rights and other equity and inclusion procedures being followed? Do the district's nutrition-centered policies and procedures align with federal regulations? So I'll report any of these concerns to the superintendent. I found that that the actual questions arise naturally and organically, but I think with the wellness policy review, that's going to be a great way to kind of align all of that together. My second goal is kind of an extension of one of my goals from last year. I knew that there's a revamp of the district's capital plan under consideration, and so I decided to kind of add a bonus points round to my inventory goal for last year and make a contribution to the goal. So the original kitchen equipment list that I inherited when I started working here contained what I suppose I would describe as wildly optimistic lifespans on equipment. 40 years for a convection oven, 45 years for a walk-in cooler. And after updating the inventory and making those capital improvement purchases last year and scrambling to replace failing equipment and doing all kinds of repairs, I've realized now that it's important to first add dates and descriptions of major component rebuilds or replacements to our master equipment list. Here's a perfect example. The capital plan has 2 entries in it: walk-in cooler and walk-in freezer, Freeport Middle School, installed 2001, 45-year life expectancy. Now, walk-in cooler isn't just a fridge, right? It's a 4 walls and a ceiling inside a building, and inside there's an expensive machine, and then tied to it on top of the roof, there's another expensive machine, and it's tied together with expensive copper, and it's full of expensive gas. And I've repaired all of those parts. But now the room itself is a problem, but also the cooler that has a separate expensive indoor and outdoor machine and expensive gas is part of that room. And so I think as we look at the capital plan, we need to refine what we're looking at so we have better data sets for making decisions about where it's to be spent and how we spend it. We're looking now at replacing this unit, but putting it outside so that we never have a problem with it inside our building again. And secondly, we want to revise those lifespans to reflect the reality that things aren't built the same way that they used to be, for better or worse, and that our priorities as a district have changed. Technology and efficiency has advanced since this plan was made. I think doing this work on the heels of the planned energy audit makes sense. And I've already made changes to the types of equipment that I purchased for the district because of the evolving priorities. I'm replacing boiler steamers with boilerless units. They're safer, they're cheaper, more energy efficient. They don't involve an inspection or a condemnation by an inspector. 10 years ago, I would have never dreamed that I could buy an energy efficient commercial refrigerator, but I've bought 5 Energy Star rated commercial refrigerators in the last 3 years. So our facilities director has plenty of previous experience with this stuff, and I think he and I'll make a good team to refine this equipment plan. And so if you have any questions on any of that stuff, I'd be happy to answer.
Danielle, since I cut you off last time, you had a question.
It's all right. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. I was going to ask where that wellness survey stuff was because I couldn't find it on the website. So I'm looking forward to seeing that stuff. I guess I have a general question, not necessarily tied to your goals, but with the middle school kids being here at Durham's, the menus are quite different from Durham to the Freeport Middle School.
Mhm.
And I look at this as, is there a consideration or something we can talk about perhaps offering some of those similar options here? And the only reason I ask is because I think these kids they're bigger than elementary kids. They're playing a lot of sports. They're traveling to places to do these sports. And I'm just wondering if maybe we could tweak their nutrition and offer them a little bit more. Even if it was an a la carte stuff, like offering the yogurt parfait or some different options for them.
We've considered that just about every year. The challenge is a couple of things, but mostly around the schedule. If it were the case that grades 6, 7, and 8 all came one after the other, then it would be manageable for us to be able to swap out and add a la carte items, for example, onto the serving line. But as it stands right now, my staff barely have enough time to breathe between lunch periods, and the junior high is staggered. Correct me if I'm wrong. It still is, correct? Yeah. So that was the other issue, is a combination lunch of 5th grade and 6th grade. I suppose it is possible that we could tell 5th graders that they're not allowed to have the things that are available to the other kids in their lunch period. But we haven't really gone there. In terms of what they're given quantities or proportions, the portion sizes for junior high kids are larger. So we do serve the junior high portion to the fifth graders. So there's no difference in nutritional value, but we can certainly look into some things that may be available. Are you talking about reimbursable meals or a la carte purchases like snacks and things like that as well?
I guess both,
Mhm.
depending on, I think what just different options I'm looking at. Again, in years past, just stuff has come up with my own kids of not having, when previously running out of hot lunch, and then now they're traveling to go somewhere for a game. So I'm just looking at it as, again, they're middle schoolers. It's a little bit different than the elementary, and just some other options for them.
Yeah, I think now's a good time. I mean, Mr. Pidden and I can probably look at the bell schedule and see if some tweaks could be made to see what we can do to work on something like that.
And I would think similar to giving the fifth graders the middle school portion. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to giving them access to the a la carte too, right? Just
It's actually prohibited.
oh, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as
I'm
long
not
as there's not
opposed
a rule
either,
against it, which
but,
clearly there is. So,
yeah.
have you noticed any update with the shortening of the lunch at the high school?
Have I noticed anything?
Like we always hear that they have a very short window to get through the whole line and get their food. And I mean, I don't know how you would track it, but I was just curious if there's been any feedback or anything about the shortened lunch period.
At the high school, we put all of our purchases through the point of sale. So we actually could track it. If you wanted the data and wanted to know what time the last student received their meal, so you could look at it, I'm happy to provide that to you. I haven't heard any feedback from my staff except that when I'm there at lunchtime, I can see the line out the door. So I would imagine that those kids that are at the end of the line are not having much time to eat.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need any of I was just curious if you'd heard anything anecdotally and how one might track, not the fact that they didn't get a meal, because hopefully everyone who wants one is getting one, but making sure that they're not throwing it away because they don't have enough time to eat it.
Yeah, I can tell you based on the amount of tray waste that we have at the high school that not many people are throwing much of anything away.
Good.
So they are eating what they take. I have spent a fair amount of time on the cameras this year looking for other things, not what's on their trays. But I do notice that kids have plenty of time. The lunch periods that I've watched, they've had plenty of time to eat.
Good. That's what I was hoping to hear.
The third period helps as well for that, for sure.
Thank you so much, Erin. I really appreciated hearing about the progress on the goals from last year. And I think it just speaks to the quality of our nutrition program, how many meals you're serving, and just the work that you're doing to hear the student. I really appreciate the work that you're doing to hear the student voices and incorporate that feedback and as well as parents. And also the equipment, like looking at the equipment, that's so important. I wanted to ask, when you refer to your staffing levels, and I know we're not to the budget yet, and so maybe you'll have some asks for us
Yeah.
when it comes to that. I know you're flat out right now, and is it manageable, and how are you doing? And it sounds like your staffing level, like, have you have a lot of absences? Is that what's going on?
We've had several people out on long-term medical. And then when they come back, others go out on long-term medical. So it's just been an unlucky year frankly, for the people who are out on long-term medical, let's face it. Like I said, Deanna stepped in. My sub, Emma, turned 84 last week, and she's worked 40 hours a week since the beginning of the year. The retired manager from here has been working for us. I'm working with vocational rehabilitation to bring in a former student from here to start looking into that. So we're getting by. But like I said, even when we're fully staffed, there are days and there are definitely locations like the high school in particular where we don't have enough regular staff, even when they're all in. So yeah, I do anticipate wanting to add some positions. The good news is when meal sales are up, so are revenues. And I don't foresee there being a situation where I have to come to you and ask you to pay for that at all. So that's what we're working towards.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just one more question. Do we try to, I guess, locally source some of our products for for the kids, including maybe milk and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I actually was going to bring all of that stuff, and then I had a vision of myself standing here saying all this. So it must have been in my budget thing last year, but yeah, we do a lot of that for a number of reasons. Number one, we want to support local farms and local producers. We get local fish, tons of local apples. We're buying cucumbers and kale and lettuce. We buy a lot of our lettuce from Springworks right down the road in Lisbon, and a lot of that started here at RSU5 when the pandemic, because that's how I could get things that I couldn't get because they were coming from California and their supply chain issues. The other reason is because the federal government and the state government have provided financial resources to us to offset the additional costs of those things. Last year, we had access to up to $5,000 where they would reimburse us a third of our cost for local foods, up to $5,000. And I think we used just about all of that up. This year, the feds kicked in another grant to the state, which I've already spent on Maine milk, which was about $11,000. So yes, it's great, and we're happy to do it. And the state is doing some work to try to make it easier for us.
So thank you. Thank you not only for the presentation, but to hear how busy you guys are and how flat out you are, but you're still making time to work with the students at JMG and figure out ways to support the programs that they're working on, not only with your time, but your dollars. Always going above and beyond. So really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. So next up is the athletic review with Eric Hall.
Good evening. First, I want to start off by thanking the board of directors for taking a chance on me as the athletic director for RSU5. It has been a great transition, and the support has been very tremendous. It isn't easy filling in the shoes of Craig, who helped build these programs, but I appreciate the opportunity. Before I begin with last year's goals and my goals, I just want to kind of give a recap of the fall season. It was a great start for coming into Freeport. Our participation numbers for the fall are the following. For the fall at Freeport High School, we had 266 student athletes. At Freeport Middle School, we had 115 student athletes. And here at Durham Community School, we had 45 student athletes. I can speak about the high school. Felt we had a great season. From hosting a lot of preseason games to playoff games. Each of our sports were successful. Here are the following highlights of our of our fall teams. Golf. Our golf team won the Western Main Conference Championship, and they followed that up with being runner-ups in the Class B state championship held at Natanis on October 6th. Our very own Eli Spalding won his third consecutive state Class B championship. And for those who are not aware, and then I just found out too, Eli Spalding was named the Portland Press Herald Golfer of the Year. And he's got an interview tomorrow with Michael Hoffer from the Forecaster, who he will be named Player of the Year for the fall. He has also accepted a athletic scholarship to Loyola University in Baltimore. So we have our own Freeport Pride going to be playing in a Division I golf program next fall. Moving on to our boys soccer program. Our boys had a record of 7-4-3 in a very competitive Class B South region that they played in. The boys traveled to Lincoln Academy to play in a quarterfinals game in which they played 2 overtimes and did not determine a winner. They had to go into penalty kicks, and unfortunately, when you go into penalty kicks, sometimes the ball doesn't always bounce the way you want it to. But they had a great season, and although they didn't win, they're going to be a great team to watch next year. Our girls soccer team had also a 7-4-3 record. Our girls made it to the playoffs, hosting Lake Region in a quarterfinal game, beating them and advancing to the semifinals, where they had to travel to play Yarmouth. And like I said, the ball doesn't always bounce the way we want it to. It didn't end the way they wanted to, but there's a lot of pride in that program, and they're going to be a team to watch next year. Football, although the record wasn't what the team had anticipated at the beginning of the year, they did find themselves in the playoffs, and they went to number 4 Poland, knocked them off, and then traveled to face Wells in the semifinal regional game. Did not beat Wells, but Wells did go on to win the Class D state championship. So they're getting closer and closer each year. Our cross country girls placed 3rd in the Class B South region and qualified, in which they finished 5th in a tight competitive race. We have a strong group of young ladies coming back next year who they will vie for a state championship. Moving on to boys cross country. They had a year. They started off by Western Maine Conference Invitation. Then they moved to the region. They won the Class B South region. And on November, they returned to a cross country course and captured the Class B state championship, making it a three-peat. On that very same day, and I'll get to that in just a minute, our field hockey team, their record was 10-3-1, earning them the 2nd seed in Class B South region. Our field hockey team knocked off Lake Region in the quarterfinals, then defeated Greeley in the semifinals, leading them into the regional finals against Yarmouth at Freiburg Academy. That game went into overtime, and a couple minutes into overtime, we scored the winning goal, which then secured a place for our field hockey team to go to the Class B state championship at Lewiston. They played Coney. In the first 2 quarters, we jumped on a 2-0 lead, never looked back, winning a state championship for the first time in girls school, first time in sport history for our field hockey team, which is the same day that the cross country team won. So I had to try to coordinate a bus, or I guess you could say an escort, coming down through the town with a team coming from Belfast and a team coming from Lewiston. It was quite, it was interesting. So it went well. Looking back at the goals for 22-23, like I said, I wasn't here, so this is what I could decipher from Craig. Goal 1, looking back on what he had put in, was to provide meaningful learning opportunities for our students while supporting both their academic and personal growth. He was reviewing and assessing each of the programs. Coming into this year, two goals that he achieved was, we now have a JV golf coach. This year, our golf team had 25 young men and young ladies playing. So having another coach there has helped our program to be able to entice more to come out. The other goal was first team baseball coach that we'll start advertising here in January for a lot of young student athlete males who are coming out for baseball. This will help us be able to fill another opportunity for our student athletes. And at the same time, putting in for a full-time athletic trainer. We're one of the few schools that in the state that I'm aware of from my conversations around the state that has a full-time athletic trainer. It's been very instrumental. It's helped us being able to have our student athletes who need to be seen for injuries, be seen and not have to feel like we have to contract out. And there's a lot of schools that are facing that dilemma. Goal 2, Craig had done an exploration of athletic facilities at Freeport Middle School, which was one, I believe, was to reconfigure the baseball and softball fields along with the outdoor basketball courts. The basketball courts have been referred to the Facilities and Operation Committee. So those are the goals that I could decipher from what Mr. Sickles had last year. Any questions on those? So my goals for this year, first goal is, since I'm coming in new from a smaller school to a bigger school, I want to have the chance to assess and examine our athletic curricular programs through a lens of equity. By this, I want to be able to see if we are meeting all of our student athletes, all of our curricular programs that we have here at Freeport High School, along with the middle school and over here at Durham. What I want to do is be able to see if we meet the essential needs are being met, to ensure that we're meeting Title IX standards in our athletic programs, to review our programs. Are we meeting the needs of all of our students, not just student athletes, but students right across the board? Does our expenditure for essential equipment needs, are we equitable for sports and genders? I want to look at our practice schedule to make sure that our teams have the same access to our turf facility. And to make sure that we also have all our teams feeling that they have that same equitable as we should be having. By doing this, I want to look through a timeline of doing a survey that would go out to all the students in April to see where we are, what are some of the tweaks that I need to make as the athletic director. At the same time, also look at our practice schedule over the last 3 years to see if we have the same number of hours practice time is equitable for field hockey, girls soccer, boys soccer, to make sure that we do have that equitable. Any questions? Goal 2. So when I met with Mr. Sickles back in June, when we were kind of handing over keys, one of the things he told me was the uniform rotation is broken. So it made me a little nervous because uniforms are are an essential piece of the equipment. So he had to order some uniforms prior to my arrival. So I'm in the process of building a uniform rotation that's going to allow us to look at our uniforms for not just the high school, but the middle school and the community school. And by having a rotation is going to allow myself and us to expend money more efficiently, more effectively, and be able to plan accordingly. I had this in my previous position. Having a rotation cycle allows you to kind of start planning of what you need for uniforms. My goal is to try to get the uniforms to last 5 to 6 years. I know that sometimes is not always the case. But by having a rotation also allows the opportunity to, as I said, planning, especially when the National Federation of High School Sports sometimes modifies uniforms, such as you can only wear a certain color, or you need to have this or that, or you can't have stripes. There's a lot of little rules there that we have to follow. And one of the things that I've noticed is that there's not always a lot of choices. So working with the vendor to provide more choices for our coaches and myself to look through to see quality that will present our Freeport Falcons and our Durham Tigers, really well. I think that's important. So by having a rotation can look at this, I can start forecasting 2 years out when a team is coming up for a new uniform without having to scrape and try to cut corners. So this is something that has been started. Talking with both middle school athletic directors on what they need, talking with coaches, and trying to come up with a plan that will be reflected in the budget that will be coming up shortly. My last goal is I want to create what is called a captain's leadership council for our student athletes. And the reason for this is a lot of times athletes who become seniors spent 3-4 years on a team are sometimes looked upon as captains, or they've earned that respect to be captains. However, like a lot of things, you got to practice to be effective as a captain. And a lot of times we don't always give them the tools to be captains, or how they should use their voice and how to work with their peers. It's sometimes hard when you're senior and you want your peers to do a certain thing and they see you as a friend, but they don't see you as the captain. So what I've done over the last few weeks is we started off by going to the Western Maine Conference leadership training. I took 5 underclassmen, student athletes, with me to St. Joseph's. They spent the day there with everybody from the Western Maine Conference. So they were able to start seeing some of the student athletes that they played against in different lights. It was a good conference. St. Joe's did a really great job. So that's helped build that. I'm taking a course through the National Interscholastic Athletic Administration Association. That's a lot of A's. On building a leadership council. It's called the LTC 726. So that's one thing that I've been planning. And then a couple more courses that I'll be taking, so that next year, when we start school year, we'll have a leadership council, which I will talk more with my coaches about who their captains will be, and we'll meet weekly to start off with, to kind of give them communication skills, how to deal with some sensitive issues, how to be able to work with their coach, how to be able to work with the athletic director, and maybe some of the things like what they may want to see fans do and not do at games. So there's a lot of cool things about this, and it's something I've always wanted to do. But I feel like this is the perfect time to do it. As I said, there's a lot of opportunities here that I want to take advantage of and put our programs out there for people to want to be. I don't have anything else. Does anybody have any questions?
Danielle.
Well, thank you, Eric, for the presentation. I love the leadership idea and getting the captains some training. I think that's great. I think Jen Gulko does a great job with the leadership committee already at the high school, which Lily mentioned as well. I also love the uniforms idea, because being on a boosters last year, we kind of battled with the uniforms. So it's kind of nice to know that there's going to be a rotation, and also work on maybe the quality of them, because like you said, to get them to last and everything. And the boys football team here doesn't have shorts, which is kind of funny that they have to bring their own shorts for full uniform. So it'd be nice for them. Kind of going back, I guess I should have asked this in the first part when you asked if we had any other questions, but you mentioned hiring a baseball coach and doing that in January. I'm wondering, that was Craig's practice. Would you consider maybe an idea of maybe starting much earlier to hire coaches? And the only reason I ask about that is because it seems like if there is a delay in hiring someone because we can't find a good coach, or it takes time to get someone into the system, that could delay what the team has available for them. And I know personally a lot of schools surrounding us, they were looking in the summer for coaches. And is that something we should consider?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to post for that job in December. So I'm kind of looking at, we have the holiday season coming up, and then hopefully by that first week, we can start doing the interviews and have a person in place before the end of the second week.
Kelly.
Yeah, I just have a specific question. I noticed my son is in middle school and played on the rec tennis program this year. And I noticed as we were playing the other teams that it appeared all the other middle school tennis programs were actually affiliated with the schools. And I was wondering if that was something that we would ever consider doing. And if so, if not, what are the reasonings there?
I don't have a good answer for that, because when I came in, it was under the community program. So I don't know how that is. I would have no problem having a communication or talking with Peter Wagner about that. I mean, I really didn't know why it was underneath there. And I wish I could give you a better answer for that.
Yeah, I just sort of wonder if we would get more participation if the program was associated with the school itself.
I would think so, yes.
I think it's always a chicken and the egg scenario of demand and funding, and do we have places for them to practice, and all the things that go into why it takes. I don't know, when did we start talking about the swimming team, right? And I think last year was the first year we actually got a actual swim team where they weren't swimming with another group. So it's my understanding is it's quite a process to add a sport at the high school. I'm not sure we've added a middle school sport since I've been on the board, but it's I think it's usually it's easier to go in and out of when it's through rec as opposed to through the school, with demand and who's interested and that kind of thing. So, I don't know. It's not a super helpful answer. Sorry. Other questions? My question that I had for you was around the coaches and the evaluation process. So this would be your first year going through that. And obviously you probably haven't done it yet, so you might not have much of an answer yet, but I'm just curious how you find that process to be, if you find it robust enough, if you find there's enough, oversight for the coaches for your liking as the AD, and if you had any, recommendations around that process. I would be interested in hearing them.
Just starting it, and I find it to be very comprehensive. I kind of like it. I think once I get through the first cycle and move on to get a better idea of where I might want things, tweaked here and there. But I mean, when I look at that, it's got a lot of the things that you would want to be sitting down with your coach and evaluating from them, the program, and everything that kind of aligns with what the district goals and mission are.
Thank you. All right. Are we good with Eric? Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
All right. So our last update and goal review for the evening is Durham Community School. Is what? Oh, are you not last?
Dang it. You got off that. Let's see if I can. Right, so good evening. My name is Will Pidden. I'm the principal here at Durham Community School, and so I do have a few slides. Sorry to make you sort of twist around, but I'll also speak to them. So either which way. So a couple of school updates. I come to the board to ask about reconfiguring a position from a guidance role to a PE teacher to finish this school year out. We were successful in hiring that person, and that has started. This has allowed us to continue with our plans for grades 5 through 8. We are going to have to reconsider this, and we've been working on that in regards to upcoming budget work. We'll talk about that when we come back around to the budget in terms of what it will look like for next year, so we can actually get to the sustainable program we're hoping to achieve. Quick update from PTA. I want to just give a shout out. They're doing an amazing job supporting us. One of the things that had come up last year when we were looking at ways of engaging students with either fieldwork or enrichment opportunities was a challenge for teachers, often actually the time to research what options exist out there. And so PTA has set up a resource where teachers can just enter into a Google form with what they're hoping to achieve. And then there's a couple of members of the PTA who then they do this sort of research of what exists locally and then bring back those options to the teacher. And in fact, I've also then gone a step further in helping facilitate. So, for example, we had third grade in looking at the sort of local history piece. We're looking for some examples of presentations that could be done. And through that process, it was coordinated with the Durham Historical Society. And then they provided some speakers to do a tour of the town, explaining parts of the history, which was incredibly well received. And now actually some of our middle school students are going to do a similar component. In addition, just to give a shout out to the PTA's craft fair is this Sunday, which is their big annual fundraiser right here in the gym. 7th grade humanities, I want to give a shout out Brown, who is a new humanities teacher this year, had envisioned a project that she wanted to try, and she initiated this through putting a post out there, basically on a sort of educator's blog, and looking for schools around the country to participate with her and our students in this. It's 7th graders working on a community project, really sort of sharing about culture, sort of the visible and invisible culture of their communities. And they actually had about 50 schools reach out, which was a lot too many. So they ended up partnering with schools in Ohio, Chicago, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and Florida to try and have some geographic range. And the students put together, they wrote pieces about their school, about living in Maine, living in Durham. They asked us to submit pieces about our school, and they also contacted local businesses around making donations that they could send out. So they had everything from Moxie and things from LL Bean, the Humpty Dumpty chips. They felt it was super important that there was items from the get and go. And so these are the things they sent. And then what has come back in return from these schools is a box. And when the box arrives, you can imagine they're super excited to read it. There are and open it. And schools have sent things from like sports caps and shirts from local pro or semi-pro teams to like what are their sort of snacks that they eat or things that are a big part of their school community. One that really surprised kids was a school in Ohio that was a school with 800 sixth graders, and they just contemplating comparing their school and this school was writing to them like, I can't imagine having 45 sixth graders. So it's been really interesting, and one of the unexpected outcomes that Ms. Brown was sharing with us is that it really helps students see how easily single stories can be created through sort of assumptions or stereotyping. And as they've now sort of moved on into Wabanaki studies, she says they're viewing it with a very different light as to understanding different kind of cultural norms and systems and structures that exist, everything from sort of like foods to habits to communication style. So it's really been a fun project, and just looking to grow it next year, along with sort of continuing some reciprocation with schools away from our own community. And then just a quick sort of professional learning update. The K2 staff have embraced new units of study, finding them to be a great upgrade. A lot of work going on with that. Great support from our literacy strategists. And grades 3 through 6 here, working in professional learning cycle with Maine Math and Science Alliance, along with our colleagues at Pownell, really focusing on creating rich next-gen science standard aligned units. And that's been really interesting PD that they're working on as they're looking to create a sort of a richer science experience in those intermediate grades leading up into the 7th and 8th grade. The goal reflections, we had a couple of goals we worked on last year. One, to increase the percentage of staff who identify learning opportunities as flexible and accessible for all students. That came from the work we had done on DEI around equity and inclusion, and that had been ranked as the highest need. So some of the work we did We worked within a shared text across the teaching staff, how learning works. In fact, all educators in the school. Our math and literacy strategist coaching around differentiating and supporting all learners. A big piece was the alignment around progress monitoring with our intervention rounds and how we are really keeping track of students and how they are doing with their learning. And a piece that we were really focused on is blurring the lines. So multi-tiered systems of support. You've heard, I think, I've referenced RTI in the past in responses to intervention. These are, and MTSS has sort of replaced that. It feels like in education, you have to freshen up the acronyms at least every 2 years. And so the important part is that when we think about multi-tiered systems of support, that it is fluid and that we want to make sure that all students are owned by all staff. And so with that in mind, this big focus of our work last year was around, ensuring teachers understand their role in making a difference and their belief in making a difference and blurring the lines between the different levels and the different tiers. So that very much happened with our work with our literacy and math specialists or sort of RTI interventionists. The big change for us last year was in our intervention rounds as we're looking at all student data across a whole grade with all the teachers in that grade. Is this collective ownership of the teachers. For an example, like fourth grade teachers owning all fourth grade students, supporting each other and helping these kids be successful. And with that in mind, one of the pieces that really sort of evolved was that the specialists started to also bring resources the teachers could utilize. And often teachers were saying, actually, this would work really well for these students, but it would also work well for this student. And the transfer across to supporting students really was impactful. That chart just showed a little bit the gain that was made. Our goal had been to increase on staff data a sense of learning opportunities that are accessible and flexible for all students by 10 percentage points. It's that third column there where you see staff data. The 21-22 results were right there. Blue and green are stronger than weak. Yellow and red are weaker than strong. And so you see it went from basically 38% to like 87%. There was a lot of factors involved, but sense of being aware that ensuring that all students have opportunities that are flexible and accessible. Our second goal was focused on, it seems so, I don't know, when I was looking back at this one, it seemed like really that was only then, but returning last year was really, we were still very much post-COVID and looking at how are we ensuring that we get school back to being sort of a joyful learning climate for students and for staff to work within, and to help sort of rebuild social problem solving skills that had not had opportunities to really develop and get feedback on during that COVID period. Some of the activities we did, we established partner class and time throughout the year where older students are matched with a class of younger students, and they do a range of different activities with their classes, which was great. We've continued that this year. In fact, everything we did last year, we've continued this year. It seems funny to say monthly socials for middle school students because we've done that for years and actually decades. And but we didn't for a few years. And what was so interesting last year, while we were back at monthly socials, we're part of, we the principals group within the same sports group that our districts are involved in. And other middle schools were reaching out to say, is anybody going to do a social this year? And, some schools were saying, we're thinking of doing one in the spring. And, by the time this question was being posed, we were already like 4 in it. So it was interesting how a lot of other schools were definitely a little slower getting back to offering some of the activities and norms of schooling. We also ensured there was a lot of opportunities for after school for families and children to come in and celebrate with math nights, literacy, reading, engineering night, etc. focus on celebrating with grade level assemblies or activities for younger grades, just trying to really create a sense of normalcy coming back out of the time period we'd all been involved. So those were the goals of the last 2 years. Not last 2 years, last year. the this coming up, the goal we're looking, we have 2 goals coming in here. We're continuing with the DEI survey that we used previously. We pose the same questions, and the way that data is gathered for that is staff, we send it out to families, and we also survey our students in grades 6 through 8. They provide feedback off of their computers. The piece that really came out this year was more student, one that we felt was a priority. And across the survey we do, there are some different sort of almost umbrella sections of like where these things would fit in. What was interesting, all 3 of these statements, DCS is a safe space for communication. All people are seen and valued for who they are. People at DCS communicate respectfully with each other, are actually under different umbrellas. I hadn't quite realized how sort of synonymous and similar they are. But so it felt accurate when they actually stood out in each of those umbrella sections. And for our students, those scores had gone down from the previous year. So that has become the focus of this work. Action steps we have, we've done quite a bit already with PD with staff, focused on teaching into the goal areas, providing feedback to students. Professional learning, we're really kind of like circling back to our core values around honesty, empathy, respect, and responsibility, and finding ways to make those actually applicable and relevant to kids, so they know what they mean at their respective grade span or in their respective role as a student at our school. A big one that came out, which feels like it goes beyond K through 8, but teaching how to disagree respectfully. That was a piece where a pattern in talking with staff and with students, this sense of you don't have to win a conversation. You can respectfully disagree or hear another person's perspective. One of the things we've been doing, Ms. Harrison, our assistant principal, and I are meeting with 7th and 8th grade advisory. So we meet once a week. The work looks a bit like this. So they start off in their morning advisory. We meet with a different group each week, and we pose them the question of those 3 particular questions. So, you know, DCS is safe space for open communication. They have 3 options. It does not feel like a safe place, feels like a safe place most of the time, or feels like a safe space for open all the time. They respond to those. And what was interesting, we hadn't really thought of this, but posing this question with 3 options as opposed to 4 definitely changes how the response is if you just sort of look at the data, because now the middle option, which is most of the time, when there's 4, there's no real middle to choose from. So you're generally going to be choosing weaker than strong or stronger than weak. But this is just to guide us. And part of the work we're doing with this, so for example, then within each advisory, we meet with them in the morning, and then they come down and join us at snack time along with their advisor. From their feedback, we identify one of the 3 questions. So this morning's was this particular group, and this is what they came up with as their need. From that, they're just put up into like pairs or triads with some post-it paper, and they create a scenario with some fictional characters to explain what would that sound and look like if that was not, that communication was not being handled respectfully here at DCS. They sort of share their scenario with the team. They then switch to somebody else's scenario, and that team then rewrites the scenario reflecting what it would look like. And then from that, we ask them to identify as a group, so what would be student roles in impacting this target area? And what would be teacher and school roles? What are things we need to be thinking about or considering to impact this this area. And the reason we're doing it this way is in the past we have asked for people who might be interested in being leaders or helping us with this, but that in and of itself becomes a relatively small group. And what we wanted to make sure is that everybody had their voice in this, but not only do they have their voice in it, they also understand their role in it. And so what happens with this, we will then, once we've been through every advisory group, we then meet with the whole of 7th and 8th grade to share the bigger picture with them from their feedback. And then with work we'll be doing with them collectively, and then circling back in the springtime again with each group to see where we're at that point. The other goal we have is, you heard me mention at the beginning, from multi-tiered systems of support. We have built relatively robust systems at this point, which continue to be refined around math and literacy, but also around behaviors. But the area that feels like a gap is around social emotional learning. And so the goal here is to develop a strategic and sustainable system to provide interventions for social emotional learning. The outcome will be a multi-tier system of support to provide those interventions. So this is work that's obviously just started up this fall. Develop a social emotional learning team to lead the work and oversee the process. That is in place. We meet every other week. Research existing approaches. We are deep into that work right now, which has been actually very interesting in terms of this. A slightly cynical view would be the scramble of publishers to get stuff out to sell. And so it's interesting to actually have to tease through it all to see how authentic and actually actionable some of this is. But then, you know, I have a clear vision for what it means for our school. We're reviewing current practices, identifying gaps in service. And then the big one is around sort of determining the data process to be used for identifying levels of need, but also for progress monitoring. And that is a core component of a multi-tiered system of support. And it's one of the trickiest ones within this sort of area of focus. So that is the ongoing work around that goal. And that's it. So if any has any comments or questions?
Did you want to introduce your new assistant principal?
I sort of sent a slight one, but Mrs. Kate Harrison is our assistant principal right here, and is an integral part of all this work. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Kelly.
I really love the work that you're doing to strengthen some of the DEI indicator questions that you've been looking at. And I was wondering if any of this has been shared with the other administrators, particularly the Freeport Middle School, and if you know if they're having similar challenges in the Freeport Middle School and how they're working together to help, you know, work on these collaboratively.
So we haven't specifically gone around this piece of the multi-tier systems of support. What we do is share across all the schools, and because we cross all the schools, with the exception of the high school, what different things we're working on collectively, and we definitely learn from each other. So one of the pieces this year with the middle school is we had a district level professional development training in the summer from Responsive Classroom. So across both schools, it was definitely a real focus area at FMS as they were adding in and looking at their advisory program in a similar way that we have sort of made some shifts to our advisory program this year also, though they're both built around the same sort of approach with Responsive Classroom. And what that is, you know, one of our sort of tier one approaches to these sort of emotional and sort of social communication platforms. In regards to the MTSS work, we haven't gone there yet because we don't feel like we have enough to share. They're aware of the work we're doing, and then we do continue to compare it, especially because Paige Fournier is the sort of instructional coach, and she works across both our schools. So she shares with us all sorts of great practices going on there, and likewise brings back things that we're working on. But we will definitely be continuing. One of the things that Jean has, you know, as we've been going through this work, has been super clear on encouraging us all to sort of share our areas of focus, not only in these goals, but specifically around the sort of social and emotional learning, because it is across the board that it's being experienced.
I think that's the fewest number of questions you've ever gotten. You should run now.
It's the slides.
Thank you, Will.
Actually, I think what it is I think strategically, I don't know whether somebody on the board paid Ginny off, but often I go first and then Erin and Craig used to follow. So I think earlier in the night, the questions are like a little more prevalent. And Ginny's like, if we move you to the end, everyone will get out quicker. I'm like,
It was actually Erin who paid her off.
oh, okay.
move- yeah.
Yeah. At first I thought it was a compliment, but the more I thought about it, I realized it wasn't. I forgot. I am going to share one last brief little social studies anecdote with you. It's not really a social studies thing, but it was kind of funny that I got an email over Thanksgiving. One of our teachers, two of her children attend our school, one in first grade and one in pre-K. And she had emailed me to say that she had been reading them the story about Thanksgiving. And she'd explained that 400 years ago, Pilgrims sailed across on this boat from England. And she explained that where Mr. Piddon's from, was from England. And then when they got here, it was just harsh conditions and they didn't have any food. And the Wampanoag tribe provided them with food to help them survive, and went through the story. And her first grader said, I didn't know Mr. Piddon was that old. And then the pre-K added on, but at least now he's got all that food. So I'm like, so 400 years, still kicking.
Okay, thank you. All right, so board comments and committee report, board information exchange and agenda requests. Maura?
I just wanted to follow up. I think that the MSBA sent out an email about the resolutions, about the delegate assembly and the outcome of the delegate assembly. I just wanted to point out that all of the resolutions did pass and none of them were changed, and we supported all of them. So I think that was a good outcome.
Did you go, Danielle? You did? Oh, I was like, wow, okay. Yes, I know. I was just teasing. All right. Any other information exchange agenda requests? I will put a plug in for the DCS Craft Fair. It is on Sunday, right? It's Sunday, not Saturday? Okay, which is unusual. So it's on Sunday. I think it's 9 to 2. They do a nice job. They have like 80 crafters that come, and you can generally knock out some holiday gift giving. It's here. Yeah, they set up in the gym, and then they have food here. They're also looking for 15 more crock pots. So if anybody's got, a meal they love to throw together and want to, because that's how they raise money. So anyway, it is they usually do a very nice job with that. So if you're looking for something to do on Sunday, highly recommend it. Any other?
I just had one more thing. I had seen in the news that the Brunswick superintendent had been talking with his board about high school start times and being open to looking at that. So I just wanted to mention that and wondering if I know we have to coordinate with them because of Region 10. And I think there was some recognition on his part that the mental health challenges that high school students experience could be impacted by the start times, and that there's a lot of research behind that. So I know that's something that's come up for this board before, and I'd be very interested in looking into that further.
Yeah, I read that article as well, and I thought for me the part that hopped out was the places that have successfully done it have done it at a state level, and so maybe that's something we need to be advocating more statewide as opposed to district by district, because I think that's one of the struggles.
It's so interesting because consistently at the state level, organizations like MSMA have opposed it because they say it should be a local decision and that we shouldn't be telling all the school districts what to do. So I'll just add that there's consistent opposition to those bills from those advocates.
Yeah, no, I understand the local control idea. or maybe it just needs more collaboration with a large block of schools as opposed to one off.
Yeah, and I don't know the status currently, but I will add that our senator in Freeport, I can't remember if she now represents Pownell still, Maddie Daughtry, had a bill in to require high schools to have later start times. And I believe it was turned into a study, like they often like to do, to explore how that could be implemented. So I think there will be more information coming.
That'd be great. Any others? Okay. Finance Committee. You want to do that, Maura, since Beth isn't here?
Or you can. We have an exciting update.
Yeah, I mean, so we had our committee meeting. I don't even remember when this was. This was October. Yep, end of October. I wasn't there, but I'm happy to share.
I can try. So the audit is still ongoing. I believe the pace is better this year. I think that in general, we hope to have it done by the end of the year. That's a goal eventually, I think. I think we're moving back from just having it done by the end of the school year, which is what happened last year. So I think that Kelly's doing a really good job there, and she's been giving us updates on how that's coming along. And it seems like it's progressing a lot faster than it did last year. So I think that's a good thing. And then she gave us an update today. Oh, they began working on the budget. And we discussed the community budget brochure briefly, which we talked about again today, and are working with the Strategic Communications Committee to streamline that and make some improvements. And then we decided that we should get cost sharing on the schedule and figure out when we're going to talk about that. So we discussed that briefly at this meeting as well.
Yeah, and while this isn't the report out for tonight's meeting, since we did just have it, we do, our plan is the Finance Committee is getting together at least twice in December and potentially more if necessary. Our goal is to come back to the board for that first January meeting to talk about cost sharing and with some options as the board requested. So that is coming your way. Any questions for Maura? Okay. So after finance is probably strategic. Nope, it's policy. Colin's not here either. Anybody want to grab policy? Candy?
It's pretty self-explanatory. We didn't have a whole lot of policies to look at this time, but really spent our time on the ones about physical restraint and seclusion, and we'll continue to be looking at those. I don't know. Do you have anything else, Sammy, to say? No? So they will eventually come to you.
Great. I went to one of the sessions at the MSMA conference that was specifically about this and the new rules, and it was very interesting how it was by one of the attorneys. It was a very interesting session around the restraint and seclusion, and what does seclusion mean, and what does restraint mean, and
Right.
what's allowed, what's not allowed. All right. Any questions for Candy? No? Okay. Moving right along. Strategic communications. Is that you too?
Yes. And again, it's pretty simple. We've been working on the budget brochure and have input from the finance committee. And you'll see this was from the end of October. We met again this morning, and we're still working on the budget brochure. I don't know whether Kara or Kelly want to add anything, say anything?
I think some of the changes that we've been looking at specifically are just to kind of streamline the budget brochure so that it really focuses in on what the community might need to know in order to make budget-related decisions going into the budget process and the vote. So we sort of decided that we might move some of the academic performance-related information to a different communication device. So that's what we've been doing, is sort of streamlining that information.
And I would just add, the other thing is we did at the end of our meeting this morning kind of say what our focus would be in the coming year, and that we would be talking a lot about PR about the at RSU5 and how we want to get more out there to community members, whatnot.
Great. Well, I think Jean will be bringing back some feedback from the Finance Committee for you guys on your budget brochure. All right. Facilities and operations. Kelly.
So our meeting met on November 8th, and you've already heard from the athletic director that one of the items that will be discussed in the budget season will be the FMS basketball courts. They are being used regularly by members of the community, but they are in pretty bad shape. And so we had some community members coming to us to kind of tell us, you know what, these are a little bit disruptive to our game playing, and we would like to support some resurfacing of these courts by doing a community fundraiser to help pay for the resurfacing. And that's how important it is to our community. So they proposed that they could raise a large portion of the cost, but not all of it. So it would require a contribution from RSU5 capital funds. And so for that reason, we are going to be discussing that further during the budget process. We also discussed the capital projects funding. We have budgeted $400,000, and that's the number for a number of years. But we all know that project costs have been rising consistently for the last few years, and that may not be a great number for us to keep in our budget anymore. So we're going to be talking about that further on January 10th. We also, as a board, had an opportunity to do a facilities tour on November 11th. Glenn Reynolds, our facilities director, took the opportunity to highlight and kind of explain to us some of the top facilities needs that we have as a district in each of our buildings. And it was really helpful, I think, for us to see that up close and personal, especially as we as a board think about what we're going to be focusing on in the upcoming budget season. And finally, we have selected a firm to perform an energy audit for our district. And just so you know, an energy audit, the purpose of the energy audit will be to identify energy saving opportunities in each of our buildings, and also to look at ways that we may be able to improve sustainability measures. So this process, competitive bid process, and on November 16, we selected a number of firms that we might, actually we selected 3 firms that we would like to interview to potentially hire. And of those 3, we ended up interviewing 2 of them on November 27th. And during that interview process, we selected Energy Management Consultants, Inc., which is a local consulting company in Portland. So they will be notified, and that process will be beginning soon. I think that's about it.
Questions for Kelly? Kara? Yeah.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm really excited about this committee and the decision that the decision process last year of merging a few committees into this one. One of the concerns that a few of us had, I think, was losing some aspects of the safety committee's work that had been done before. And so I'm wondering if if the safety committee goals from last year have been rolled into this committee, and if that's something that could be looked at. And I'd also shared with the board about this Maine Safe Schools initiative, this school safety specialist badge. And I don't know if that's anything that's been done in the past, and if that's something that could be looked into. And if there is something like a school safety audit. So we're doing that. Your committee is working on an energy audit, but I'm wondering if there's something like a school safety audit that could be done as well, since I know that school safety is something that is definitely a priority for a lot of people in our district.
Noted.
So I think if we're talking about the safety, in terms of some of the goals, are you talking about, Kara, some of the, there were some items on the capital improvement list that came out that we wanted to do for safety? Is that the first piece you were referring to?
I'm not actually sure what the goals of the safety committee were in the previous years before it merged into this. So I'm just wanting to check in on that.
So the facility safety part would certainly go into there when we're looking at, for example, I'll give a simple example, camera systems, those sort of things. That would all go in as part of when Glenn's looking at the capital improvement plan, and he'll present to the facilities committee and then to the board. So that piece would be in it. But there are other pieces in terms of like practices we do. That would be done at the district level. We'll still be having those conversations. But those are conversations you wouldn't have to, for example, we wouldn't want to say if we have a certain place we're going to rally together if we evacuate. We certainly wouldn't want the public to know where we're rallying at. So those sort of things would be done in-house. The safety badge you're referring to, actually, it would really be a district employee. It wouldn't be the employee that did it. And it is a lot of, it's a pretty comprehensive to get that sort of certification, but that's certainly something we could look at for that part. And I think when you're looking for a safety audit, there's not someone really that comes in and does that, but certainly that's something we need to do with our local, example, local law enforcement, with our SRO in the Freeport schools and so forth, looking at our practices and then just our buildings in general, everything from access to security. So those are things certainly that we need to look at. And so on the facility, I think there's two pieces to it. On the facility side, in terms of the actual buildings, there's that piece, but then there's our practices too. So I think it's dual.
Are you at a desk at the end? Oh. What happened? We had all these open seats. You could have slid down. Sorry about that. I was like, did you get in trouble, Kara? Did Will put you at that? Okay. Any other questions on the facilities operations committee report out? Very thorough report. Thank you, Kelly. We don't have any policies under review this evening. We don't have any unfinished business. Well, not that we're going to talk about tonight anyway. We do have the ever important, do I have a motion for consideration and approval to appoint a new board member to the Freeport Cable TV board? Thank you, Maura, Malik. So this was the one that Susanna was on. We didn't fill it prior to adding in new board members. Sounds like we have a little more direction now on what this committee is supposed to do and other people who may actually be on the committee. So I still don't think it's a huge time or mental capacity lift, but we do need to have someone on it. So, hey, love that. Thank you, Caroline. So do I just leave the motion, right? I just write in the person's name, Caroline? Okay, good. Yeah. Does anyone want to fight her for it or no? Fight sounds bad. Sorry. That's not what I meant. Yeah. We're going to negotiate. All right. So we have a motion. We have a second to appoint Carolyn to that Freeport Cable TV board, and we will share as much vast information as we have with you. And I'm sure you'll do a great job. All those in favor? Great. None opposed. Public comment. So public comment, we just ask that you come up to the microphone, you give us your name and the town you live in and 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Chris St. Pierre. I live here in the town of Durham. I'm also the father of a Freeport high schooler. Unfortunately, some of the comments that I have for tonight, the gentleman left, who I think they're mainly kind of geared towards. I was kind of hoping that he might stay here for the public comments to actually hear this. I noticed Eric Hall had mentioned that they were looking into a varsity coach for baseball.
First team coach.
The first team coach, yes. I know Craig may or may not have filled Eric in as to the train wreck that the softball varsity team was last year. I'm kind of hoping that he had, because I think that that's something that Eric hopefully can address, mainly by speaking with some of the student athletes that were on last year's team. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the assistant superintendent was actually involved in some of the conversations with some of the girls on the team in regards to the coach or lack thereof coaching that happened on the team, to the point where there were a lot of the girls on the teams actually coaching their own teammates. So the question that was asked in regards to the lengths that we go through to try and find an adequate coach for these student athletes, I think was a great question, because I think there was a very minimal amount that happened to go that went into the process to hiring the coach that we had last year, unfortunately. So I think we were left in a situation where it was, it's got to do at this point. And I think Danielle's comment about waiting until December to start looking into it, where these spring sports such as baseball and softball start happening in March, early March, that December actually is not leaving much time to find a good quality candidate for those positions. I think in high school sports, granted, academics, number one, obviously being a parent, I want my kid to excel in academics over sports any day. But I also, if she decides to do an extracurricular activity such as sports, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, whatever it may be, I want the coach that's coaching my daughter, who may have aspirations of playing at the college level, to feel like she's actually being coached. And I wish he was here, because I'd like for him to kind of comment on that. I've actually emailed Eric myself twice since he's become the athletic director for Freeport High School, and I've got zero response. So that's all I got to say. I'm kind of putting it out here, kind of putting a bug in someone's ear, that maybe someone will actually take attention to it and address it, even if Eric doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right. 16, I would take a motion to adjourn. Kelly and Laura, thank you. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you.